Hey, good morning, church. I pray all is well with you this Friday morning. I hope you're enjoying the study of the book of Hosea as we continue it. I want to pick up on what Brother Ron said yesterday in regards to this father and this compassion and love that God has for his children, but what chapter 12 brings out, and it kind of relates back to chapter 11. Now, I do want you to know as you start reading chapter 12 that God deals not only with Israel, but also Judah. And so you'll see in this chapter, he really addresses both the northern and the southern kingdom, Israel and Judah. And you see this in verse number 2, where it says, "The Lord also brings a charge against Judah." And so you'll hear that throughout this chapter. Now, we begin the chapter that says Ephraim feeds on the wind. And then that second line there and says, and pursues the east wind. It's this picture of this nation or children, and of course it represents the children of God chasing after things that you could never gather. And the east wind was a wicked wind. It was hard. It was destructive. And so they're pursuing after this destructive wind, and they're pursuing after things that are very destructive in their life. And then God in this chapter begins to bring them back to their humble beginnings as a nation. In fact, you'll see that he brings up Jacob there and how Jacob, and by the way, it's Jacob whose name was changed to Israel. And so they're going back to the very foundations of this entire nation and said that Jacob wrestled with the angel and really talks through how God has protected and been with them all the way from the very beginning. Now, I personally love verse number 6. Verse number 6 where it says, "So you, by the help of your God, return. Observe the mercy and justice and wait on your God continually." And the reason I like this so much is those two words, mercy and justice. Folks, you can't have them separated from each other. In God, we have a God of mercy, but we also have a God of justice. There's people that like to lean way too much on God's mercy, and everything is fine and good, and never talk about his justice. And then there's people that talk about just his justice, and condemn and are negative and bitter or attacking at people, but they forget about God's mercy. And we have to realize we've got a God that is both mercy and justice. I did notice in verse number 8. In fact, I encourage you to underline these words that represent I. You'll notice it says, "Surely I have become rich. I have found wealth in myself, in my labors. They shall find in me." And so Judah, Israel at this time, here I think it's talking about Israel, they were consumed with themselves and building themselves up. In fact, they had felt like they had become something and they didn't need God anymore. And then verse 9 says, "But I am the Lord your God, ever since the land of Egypt." So again, he takes them back to the very beginning and where he brought them out. He had talked about Jacob earlier. Now he's talking about Joseph. He had talked about Jacob earlier. Now he's talking about Moses. And how God delivered the children of Israel by the hand of Moses. Now, I do want to point out the very last part, in chapter 12, verse number 13, says, "By a prophet the Lord brought you out of Egypt," talking about Moses, "and by a prophet he was preserved." Now, verse 14, "Ephraim provoked him to anger most bitterly. Therefore his Lord will leave the guilt of the bloodshed upon him and return his reproach against him." There's a strict warning that God has there for the nation. Anyway, I hope you enjoy going through Hosea. May God bless. Look forward to seeing you Sunday morning. Have a great day.